Hey guys, what's up? It's Larry. I just wanted to take a second and give you a heartfelt thanks for helping us surpass the 80,000 all-time listen mark. We've almost hit 65,000 all-time listens since January. We are well on our way to growing an incredible community, and I wouldn't be here and doing this show if it weren't for you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right? Now that the pleasantries are over, let's get on with the show.
What's happening, roadies? This is Greg Howard.
This is Jeff Slate.
What's happening, roadies? This is MARC URSELLI, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. What's happening, roadies? Welcome back to the show. Episode 108 here with MARC URSELLI. Today, this is your host, Larry Milburn, coming at you from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. How are things going out there, my friends? Did you all have a nice week? Have you stayed warm? Oh, man, it's getting cold on the East Coast. It is just getting, you know what I mean? And I can smell it. I can smell that snow in the air. I'm not looking forward to it. I've decided, my wife and I, we both decided, we grew up on the East Coast. We like the West Coast. We're not moving to the West Coast anytime soon. However, in the future, I think down the road, somewhere down the road, that's probably where we're going to end up. We like the snow. We're both skiers, but we like to visit the snow. You know what I mean? We're more visitors of winter. Come in, check it out, go skiing, and then adios. Go back to the palm trees. Anyway, we've got the incense and some candles burning here in the office, and I'm super excited for today's episode with MARC URSELLI. What a guy. This was awesome. One disclaimer, this interview, I did the interview while I was at the AES show. This was the second to last in a series done at the AES show. Very hard during the convention to find a quiet spot to sit and do an interview. So we are like downstairs by the cafeteria thing, and there's a fair amount of background noise, and I used the Rode Mic Pluses into the Zoom. So they're lavaliers. It's okay. It's okay. I had a buddy do a little work to try to help me out on these things, sound-wise. I think it sounds okay. You're going to be all right. You're going to like it. Just listen to the content, man. It's all about the content. I had a crazy week this week. Couple cool things happened. I don't know if you guys remember, going way back about a year and a half ago, I was doing a YouTube show called The Machine with my buddy Adam Lerner from Brooklyn Photo Works. He's a photographer and a fellow guitar player and a big music fan. And anyway, he called me up this week. He needed me to be his assistant on a photo shoot he had coming up, and it was for Ralph Lauren's car collection here in upstate New York, I guess you'd say, right out of the city. Anyway, holy shitballs. Let me just tell you guys, you don't know wealth until you see some serious wealth. These were probably over 60 vehicles, at least. Unreal. Gorgeous Ferraris, McLarens, Mercedes, going way, way back to the 20s. And right up to now, some just incredible cars, spotless. But the facility that this was in was just super incredible. So that was cool. That was fun. Just wanted to tell you about that. And then I finally got my pair of black Onyx gig gloves from gig-gear.com. My buddy Daniel Shotsky's, I've talked about it. They've been a sponsor of the show for the long time. He makes the gig gloves. He makes a two-hand touch. And while at AES, he hooked me up with my pair of black Onyx gloves. So I finally got to use those. I had to film a football game over the weekend out in the cold. And I thought, hey, what a perfect time to check out the gloves, see how they work while you're handling a camera, trying to focus and all that kind of stuff. They worked great. I wouldn't say this type is the warmest. He makes others, I think, that have a liner inside. But from the padding to the webbing, the construction, these are nice, man. They are really, really cool, and they look cool. You almost feel like a wide receiver wearing these things. They're really awesome. So I want to let you guys know we've got our little checkout thing, a little checkout code going on over there at gig-gear.com. Use that code ROADIE to get yourself 15% off your entire order. Don't forget, gig gloves are the best way to protect your most valuable asset on any gig job or show, your hands, man. If you fuck up your hands, you can't do your job. So when you're wearing your gig gloves, there's practically no task that you can't do with your gloves on, keeping you safer and more efficient. You can pull off the fingertips and use your fingers directly on a iPad or Surface or your phone, whatever it is, but they will work without taking the little fingertips off. And like I said, they're great. So head over to gig-gear.com. Use the code ROADIE to get 15% off your entire order. Okay, let's talk about Marc URSELLI, shall we? I could go down the list of Marc's accomplishments. Keith Richards, he started his own studio in Puglia in Italy. We get into that. He's from Switzerland. We get into that. We get into his work ethic, working with Lou Holtz. I mean, the guy has put in some time. U2, Keith Richards, the Black Crowes. He's a producer. He's an engineer. He's a live sound engineer. His enthusiasm for music, you can't even say he's a music enthusiast because the guy has a never-ending hunger. It's insatiable for music and for knowledge and for intaking amazing sounds and then outputting those sounds. Guy's got 2 Grammys on his shelf. Here's the thing that I'm going to say that you don't need to say. If you just put this out there, you don't need to say anything else about Marc URSELLI. Lou fucking Reed. Lou Reed. He was Lou Reed's front of house guy for 7 years up until Lou's death. I think that pretty much seals the deal on just where Marc stands in the echelon of badass producers. You know what I'm saying? I think so. So listen, let's just jump into it. All right. Like I said, sorry if it's a little background noisy and all that kind of stuff. It's a little tough to do there at the cafeteria at the Javits Center. But Marc and I had a good time. If you want to learn more about Marc, head over to marcurselli.com. That's MARCURSELLI.com, marcurselli.com. Great website. And he's a good dude. A good dude. Marc, I'm going to come looking for you, dude. I want to watch you in action sometime. You know what I'm saying? Doing your thing, pushing those faders. Folks, I love you. Thanks for tuning in again. Thank you again for hitting that 80,000 mark. Man, it's incredible. We're just moving forward. We're moving forward, kids. Here we go. Marc URSELLI.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
Marc, so you're interview number 2 here that I've done from the bowels of the Javits Center. How are you?
Who was the first one?
The first one was yesterday. You would have been the first one, but we got our wires crossed on times, which is all good. The first one was yesterday. Jill Craig in from New Zealand.
Wow.
Who's a monitor engineer, front of house gal. Cool. And she's staying for 2 weeks because she's also a photographer, and just conveniently worked out that next week is the photography expo here.
Oh, perfect.
We got a lot to cover. We got an hour. You have a lunch to get to. So I'm going to hit you with the first thing. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
So as you know, Night Bob hooked us up here and made the introduction. And here's what Night Bob has to say about you.
Uh-oh, I'm afraid.
Night Bob says that you have an insatiable appetite for music that not only rivals his appetite in his 20s, but surpasses it, which he finds hard to do. He says you're the guy who works all day in the studio, mixes all day in the studio, records all day, and then will either go out and see bands or go out and mix that night. He said it's endless. You have endless energy for this. Would you say that that's true?
Night Bob is absolutely correct, although I don't know what he was like in his 20s, but that is...
I would like to know what Night Bob was like in his 20s.
Yeah.
That I would have liked to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's completely right, and anyone that follows me on social media can see that. I'm basically unstoppable and unsatiable when it comes to music. Like Night Bob said, I record in the studio and I'll go to not just one, but usually 2 or 3 shows that same night.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of living in New York City. You have access to 5 shows a night if you want to, and I take full advantage of that.
Yep.
Or I'll go and mix a band, like he said, or sometimes recently, because I'm so busy, luckily, I have to go home and work on more mixes at home after having mixed in the studio for 10 hours or recorded in the studio.
Sure. So you have no wife, no children, none of those constraints?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
How do you
And by
keep...
choice, I would.
Right, yeah. Well, you don't sort of get to be where you are in this, but how do you keep that appetite going?
I don't even...
And that energy.
I mean, the appetite is just there. I don't do anything. It's I don't know, the appetite feeds on itself. I see music and I want to see more music, Mm-hmm. There's so much incredible stuff out there, and it's just, being in a concert setting is my favorite thing other than being in the studio setting. And I just feed it with information and knowledge, I just always listen to stuff. I don't have so much time to listen to music, unfortunately, except for, plane rides, subway rides. But I'm always seeking out music, whether it's on blogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then I go check it out.
Can you shut off your working brain when you go?
That's a good question.
Are you analyzing things constantly?
That's a good question.
Can you just be a fan?
Well, I try to shut it off. Of course, it's not easy.
Yeah.
If there's a problem in the mix, clearly I hear it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let it affect me to the point where I can't enjoy the concert, unless it's a gigantic problem.
Yeah.
But usually it's just something I might think, I would have done that differently or whatever. But I can enjoy a concert, and oftentimes I'm able to just check out the concert.
Right.
Especially when you're doing 3 or 4 a night.
Where's the sleep part?
The sleep part is after the 3rd or 4th show. I go home and I sleep. I'm a night owl. I go to bed around 2 or 3, and I get up around 9, and so I get my 7 hours in usually. Sometimes 6. Tonight just 5. But it happens.
Yeah. Do you have a studio at home?
I have a setup at home, I wouldn't call it a studio, although most people like to do that. When it's a pair of speakers and a monitor and some plugins.
Yeah.
I do a lot of mixing from home for people that can't afford to be in the studio, but my main work environment is recording studios. I'm a freelancer. I work in a lot of them, but my primary choice in New York is East Side Sound, which is a studio that was opened in 1972 by Lou Holtzman. Mm-hmm. Just recently, last year, changed hands. Lou is still co-owner, together with Frank Cathcart, who took over the lease. And I'm the chief engineer at the studio, and I basically do all of my sessions there. And when I'm in New York City, not on tour, I usually end up working there, 3 or 4 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
With your setup at home, again, the separation part, is it hard to not just, are you able to get out of bed, just have breakfast and chill? Or are you rolling out of bed after going to see shows and you just fire up the computer and start working? It just sounds like it's just part of your blood.
Yeah, it's part of my
flow.
It is. I mean, I might not start working right away, but I'll definitely check my email while I'm having coffee. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And then, if I don't have a session that day, I'll start mixing sometimes before noon for sure.
Yeah.
So I can put in a full day.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's crazy. That is crazy.
It's crazy good. I love my life.
It sounds like it. Well, you got to be passionate about it to keep that pace up.
Absolutely.
Right.
Without the passion, I could never do this. I could never sustain the rhythms. I could never sustain the lack of sleep. If you love what you do in life, lack of sleep is secondary, or even, time constraints become secondary. If you love what you do, you just find the energy for it, because doing it gives you the energy. So
right.
rather than, people that are surprised that I will go to a show after mixing 10 hours, I don't want to judge, but they have a different relationship, obviously, than I do. I get energized by it, by going to a show.
Yeah.
It doesn't suck out energy from me. It gives me energy.
Yeah.
I understand, of course, being tired. It's not like I never get tired.
Yeah.
And I always wear earplugs when I go to shows, unless I'm mixing them. So I pay attention to my ears. But I love it. It gives me energy and it just keeps me going.
Yeah. Do you take a break ever? Are you ever like, you know what, I'm taking a week off, I don't want to listen to anything?
Yes, I do, and it's important. I've learned that it's important. I've spent the first 15 years in New York trying to prove myself and not taking any vacations at all.
Yeah.
And working 18 hours a day. And I haven't burned out, but I realized at some point that I needed to take breaks. So now I usually take 3 weeks off in August, go to Italy where the family is and my childhood friends. I grew up in Italy,
Yeah.
where I opened my first recording studio.
Yep.
And I love to travel, which is actually part of why I love touring, you know?
Yeah.
Because it gives me an opportunity to see other parts of the world.
Sure. Before we get to growing up in Italy and Switzerland, which oddly I have a similar background,
Oh, cool.
which we'll get to.
Should we switch to Italian or to Swiss German?
Oh God, no! Well, you'll totally embarrass me.
You'll lose all your listeners.
I'll lose all my listeners.
Or maybe gain some new ones.
Well, that's true, possibly. You are a producer, record
I am.
producer. You are an engineer. You also master. You mix. You do live sound. You do a lot of different things. Some people might say, I've gotten this in the past, where because I also shoot, I edit, I do this, and I got this when I was younger. I'm curious if this has come up for you. Like, you should really focus. Why don't you focus on just being a live sound engineer? Why don't you just focus on being a mastering person? What are your feelings about that?
Well, nobody's ever told me that, but I don't usually listen to people anyway. So
It doesn't sound like it.
It wouldn't change much.
Yeah.
I will say that my primary areas of interest are recording and mixing and producing.
Okay.
And that mastering is not something I do by choice. In fact, I always try to encourage people to go to a mastering engineer because they've been doing it longer than I have, because it's a fresh set of ears on your project, etc., etc. I only master when I'm asked to by an artist that doesn't have the budget to go to a master. Oftentimes with budgets these days,
Yeah.
the artists get to the end of the process of recording, editing, mixing, and they're just out of money.
Sure.
And so if the choice is between not getting it mastered or doing the best I can with a mastering job, then I'll do that, and I'll do a DDP image for them, and I make sure the levels are nice and loud, and even between the songs, that I put in ISRC codes.
Right.
I do as much as I can do.
Yeah.
I do it all digitally in the box, and I tell them that if they want an analog mastering chain, they have to go to an analog,
Yeah.
a professional mastering engineer that has the choice of both.
Sure.
And I always provide them with names. Scott Hall does most of my mastering. Partly because he works with John Zorn. He's a person I work with a lot. On Sunday, I'm going to LA to master a very important record of mine, of my career, not of my music, but that Howie Weinberg is doing. So, different people master different things I've done. I have good relationships with all of them. And I always try to bring them the business, as counterintuitive that might sound.
Yeah.
I don't try to convince the artist to do the mastering with me. I try to convince them to use somebody else, and I'll only do it if they don't want to or can't.
Right. Is it hard to stay objective through the whole process? If you record, engineer, produce, and then you mix, and then you master as well. I mean, do you like to say, hey, you know what? I've taken it this far. Why don't you get someone else to mix it?
No,
and then
I'll
bring
see
it
it
back?
through. I'll see it through.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let somebody else mix something I recorded unless that's the artist's choice. But I would never be the one to suggest that.
Yeah.
Because I know that especially because if I'm recording it, I'm already recording with mixing in mind. you
Right.
know?
Right.
It's kind of, to me, it's kind of it's part of the whole process.
Yeah.
And I'm not often all three things, like recording engineer, mixing engineer, and producer. More often than not, I'm just recording and mixing.
Yep.
Or just mixing. A lot of the stuff I do in my home studio is just mixing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
One of the things I noticed on your site, there were several things, but one of the things I noticed that I thought was really cool for a guy who does as much as you do, for the level of artist that you do, with the 3 Grammys under your belt and 5 nominations, is you have a request a quote, which is nice because it still leaves the gate open, as you said, to artists that aren't Keith Richards or the Black Crowes, right?
Absolutely.
Or U2 or Foo Fighters. It's, hey, this guy is attainable, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. I'm very down to earth. I'm very approachable.
Yeah.
And I work with artists and their budgets. I've never said, I won't do your project because you're not famous enough or whatever. I mean,
Sure.
obviously I've turned down things because it just wasn't enough money.
Right.
Everyone has, rent to pay.
Yeah.
But I don't make a choice based on popularity. Absolutely not. I made a choice based on music. If I like the music, I'll mix it.
Yeah. Is your approach different from working with Bono than it is working with Larry Milburn, singer-songwriter?
Well, I mean,
Because he's Bono, and because I'm...
Not because he's Bono, just because they're two different artists. So my approach is has to be versatile and changes based on any artist, no matter who they are or what they do.
Yeah.
Every person requires a different working method.
How do you approach a new artist?
I talk to them and I see what they are looking for, and I try to find out what they're going for. I listen to stuff they like, or I listen to stuff they tell me they want to sound like.
Yeah.
Communication is the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. Is it hard to have that conversation with an artist who says, I want to sound like this, and you have to be like, well, that's great, but that's not what you actually sound like.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, it's harder. If they come to me at the beginning of the project, then I can deliver. I mean, I'll be like, yeah, that's no problem. Let's make you sound like that. What I struggle with is if they come to me with the shittiest of recordings, and they want to sound it. They want to sound like the best sounding stuff out there.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, well, you should have come to me earlier and we would have made sure we can get there. Now it's just like polishing a turd.
Right. All right. Let's leave that the career right now where it is, and let's go back. Born in Switzerland, Aarau, which is where?
It's 20 minutes from Zurich, German-speaking part of Switzerland.
Okay. So we lived in Morges. Morges?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Right outside of Geneva.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We moved there in 70...
French-speaking part.
6, yeah. My great uncle, who I'm named after, was a big benefactor in the opera world.
Okay.
Bought a house from a singer and moved my mom there. She worked for him. She brought us over. We were kids, went to school there and whatnot.
Cool.
And then Italy, somewhere in my 11 or 12, started the factory, and I spent a lot of time up in the north, up in Bormio. In the ski town there. Worked in the ski shop,
That's
lived with
amazing.
a family above and everything like that. My sister taught in Padova. So we've got a similar
very
thing.
similar.
You're more legit than I am, but so you were born in Switzerland, and how long did you stay there before moving to Italy? And what part of Italy did you guys move to?
I was 8 when my family decided to move to Italy. I have a Swiss mother and an Italian father.
Ah, okay.
So I'm dual citizen, dual parents, and my dad just wasn't happy in Switzerland, so he moved us down to southern Italy, the heel of the boot, region called Puglia.
Yeah.
And that's where I then spent the rest of my growing up years until I was 21, I think.
Wow.
And then I moved to New York.
And how did you start getting into music? Are your parents musical, your brothers and sisters?
We all had a musical education. My parents, my mom listened to classical music all her life. My dad was more into country western, which is a weird choice for an Italian, but it comes from his, love of western movies.
Yeah.
And so I grew up around those things being played in the car or in the house. But they sent us to music school, all three of us, me, my brother, and my sister. And then after high school, I kind of didn't really know what direction to take. I had studied electronics and engineering, not audio engineering, but telecommunication studies of frequencies. Which actually helped then in the choice of career. But I wasn't really 100% sure on my path yet at the high school age. And then it just kind of clicked one day when a friend of mine who at this point I was already playing in bands, and I had even produced a couple of bands as a producer without any engineering knowledge, just like an artistic producer.
Yeah. What were you playing?
I played piano.
Okay.
I studied piano. So a friend of mine, dear friend down in Puglia, who had a popular studio, said to me, I'm selling my console, a 32-channel inline console, for X amount of thousands of, or actually millions of Italian liras at the time.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars today. And you know, me at 16, I was like, yeah, right. How would I know of anyone having that kind of money or wanting to buy something that's like as big as a couch? And then at night it just clicked. I was like, oh, that person is me. I'm totally gonna do that. And so I bought his console, and
How'd you have the money?
my parents helped. My grandfather had just died like that same year, so they had a little bit of inheritance, and they lent me like $6,000 or something like that.
So you're the guy who says, I don't want a car for high school, I want a mixing console.
Yeah. Well,
were they like, you're fucking crazy, dude? You came to this last night?
My parents are very supportive. They're amazing. They've been amazing to me. They've always been supportive of my choices. I made some choices that were questionable, maybe in their eyes. Like, you know, I came out of high school with the highest of what do you call it in English?
Like a grade point
Grades,
average? Yeah.
Highest grade, and decided not to go to university, which disappointed the teachers, probably disappointed my parents, but they never told me about that. But I just was like, this is my calling. It's clear now, and it wasn't clear until it suddenly became clear. Before that, I was the geek in the band recording the rehearsals.
Right.
So it's not like I came from absolutely no interest in recording.
Right.
I mean, I was already amassing, I had a Fostex X26, which was a 4-track to cassette tape recorder.
Yeah.
I had 2 or 3 mics, and I had a 12-channel analog mixing desk that I would never touch today if I could help myself. So it's not. I wasn't completely, I wasn't a stranger to it.
Yeah.
But I didn't think of it as a career.
Yeah.
I was more thinking of being a musician as a career, but I was like, this is my calling. And the change, the thing that was really important to me is that as a musician, I always wanted to play multiple genres of music, which is why I had a crossover band that played a little bit of rock, a little bit of metal, a little bit of funk, etc., etc. And so the engineering choice gave me a choice to work on different genres of music, which to this day is my forte in a way.
Yeah.
In the sense, I don't let myself pigeonhole. I don't pigeonhole myself in. I don't let myself be put in a box. I, to this day, do jazz records, do classical records, do rock records, do metal records.
Do you find you have to fight against the box, or people just know this guy can do everything?
Well, I mean, it's not that people know that I can do anything. It's more that some people know me for one thing and other people know me for other things,
Yeah.
I mean, some people that I've done metal records for don't even know that I do jazz records, and they're surprised when they find out, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's more like there's not a lot of crossover between the scenes, so the scenes don't know about each other in a way.
Right. So you make this choice, you buy this desk.
I buy the desk. My parents let me set up shop in the basement. I do it right. I float the floors, drop the ceilings, 1 foot of sheetrock and rock wool on the walls, because my parents are sleeping upstairs.
You're
by the way.
17?
17, yeah. Between 16 and 17, I start building this out. So I have a live room, I have a control room, and I have 1 ISO booth.
And how do you know how to do this at that
My
age?
friend helped me, the guy
Who sold it?
who's basically my first mentor. He was expanding his studio, building a bigger one, buying a bigger console. So I bought a lot of gear from him. I started buying mics, all sorts of stuff. I basically set myself up to be able to record. And because at the time, Southern Italy, 90s, the prevalent scene was punk hardcore. I recorded a ton of punk hardcore, and I basically cut my teeth on that.
Yeah. What was his name?
Nanni Surace.
Uh-huh.
He runs a studio to this day called Pure Rock. down there.
Still there.
Still there, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think recently he does more live sound than studio.
Okay.
That just seems to be the business down there. But yeah, he's still operating. He's not much older than me. You know, I think he's in his 50s, early 50s.
Those early years for you in your teens, I guess 17 to 21, something like that, in your parents' basement, unbelievable. What were some lessons you learned? What were some hard lessons you learned? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn in terms of gear and knowledge of engineering because you know I was completely green to the professional world of recording and mixing. So I asked a lot of things to Nanni, and you know he taught me how to set up tape because I was doing tape at the time, line up tape, align tape. He taught me mixing techniques, recording techniques. What I should mention is before I opened my studio, I went to intern for him at his studio for a couple of months.
Okay. That was your school.
Yeah, that was my school. And it was a tough one because he was in a town about an hour train ride away, which involved, because this was pre-driver's license.
Sure.
16. In Italy, you only get a license at 18.
Right.
So I was still underage for driving, so I would bike to the train station a half hour away, and then take an hour train ride there, walk to the studio. It's like a 2-hour commute to go work for 15 hours for free.
Right.
And then go back home. But that's what you do.
That's what you do. Right, exactly. And your
Which
parents were
people
supportive.
today don't get.
Right.
But,
Right. But that's another.
Yeah,
that's another episode.
That's another rabbit hole.
How important are mentors?
Well, very important. I mean, he was my first one, and he basically gave me the basics that you know everything is founded upon. Then I moved to New York, and I found Lou Holtzman, who's the owner of East Side Sound, where I'm chief engineer now.
Yeah.
He was my second biggest mentor. And I would say after that it was John Zorn in terms of, I mean, he's not an engineer or producer or mixer in any kind of way, but his mentorship was more about people skills and the psychology of being in a studio and work ethics. Work ethics, like Zorn is like somebody everyone should look up to in terms of work ethics.
Why?
He's untiring, uncompromising, does exactly what he wants to do the way he wants to do it, and gets it done. And he gets up at 5 a.m. in the morning to start writing music, in his case, because he's a composer. Incredible music, by the way. And and the only breaks he takes during the day are for eating and for emailing people, so he can set up shows or recordings or concert series that he curates. I mean, he basically, like me, his life is music 100%. He doesn't do anything more than me in a way. He doesn't do anything that's not musical related. In his case, it's all about his career, but he's very much into supporting the community, which is why he curates concerts, makes connections, stuff like that.
Yeah. Are you a big community?
Very much so, yeah, very much. I mean, I am within the community of musicians of New York, so I'm always going to shows, making friends, keeping in touch with friends. I also try to support the community in multiple ways.
You have a blog? You still do your blog?
I've kind of stopped on the blog for lack of time.
Yeah.
I just do social media in a couple posts a day, nothing too long, which is why I like Instagram or Twitter. Cause, I don't like long rants on Facebook.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very much about supporting the community, and my way of giving back to the community is mixing, like you said before, mixing bands that can't afford big budgets, and I'll do it on very limited budgets if I like them, because I like them or their music.
Yeah.
To me, Jojo Meyer, who's this famous, incredible drummer, taught me this rule of the 3 M's: music, money, and mates. And years ago he said, I choose a gig when there's 2 out of 3. And I kind of live by that. If it's only one of them, if it's just good money but not good music or not nice people, I don't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I give back to the community as much as I can. And in fact, you're the first one I'm telling you this. Next year, I plan to start. I'm still working it out, so I won't divulge too much detail. But I want to do a couple of free mixes for people.
Wow.
Just to give back to the community.
Wow.
So, I'll do it in the best ways I can, within my time.
Sure. Wow. That's a couple
The
of
giving
lucky,
back, I mean,
couple
not
of
the
lucky
mixing.
artists. Yeah, right. So, all right, let's go back. So, 17 to 20.
Yeah.
You're cutting your teeth. You're doing punk hardcore. Is that what you said?
mostly
right?
that.
Italian punk hardcore. That's awesome.
Huge scene down there, by the way.
What is it?
Try asking Jello Biafra and he'll tell you.
You're right.
He knew the Italian scene inside out.
That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, huge scene in Italy.
So we're
those
like
years.
91. You're a little bit younger. You're 6
I
years
didn't do
younger
the
than me?
math. I'm 77. So
I'm 71.
So yeah, I mean mid late 90s. Yeah,
Okay.
I moved to New York. The first time I went to New York was 1999.
Okay. So while you're working and while you're cutting your teeth, was the design always Puglia's great? This is an awesome
No.
community. I'm learning,
Never.
but I gotta jump.
No,
What was the
I mean,
thinking?
I always hated Puglia. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I never felt at home. I never felt welcomed down there.
Well, I was gonna ask, do you identify as a Swiss gentleman or an Italian gentleman?
I'm a New Yorker.
Right on.
I'm definitely a New Yorker.
Yeah.
I mean, I identify with Italian food
Yeah.
or with Swiss efficiency and organization.
So
for sure.
you've pulled from those things.
I
and
like to
made
think
this-
that I took the best of both countries and
Yeah.
brought it to New York to make the person I am today.
Nice.
And some people have commented that some people in the past have said, "Oh, you kind of have the warmth and hospitality of an Italian, but the precision and organizational skills of a Swiss." That's a good compliment, and
That is a good
I can
compliment.
see myself in that.
And the balls of a New Yorker.
Because Italians are lazy and
Yeah.
and Swiss are cold, and I'm neither.
Right.
Not lazy, not cold.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a New Yorker, and that kind of drive you need to have in New York to survive.
Sure. But growing up and working before you hit 21, what was the design? What was the plan?
There wasn't a plan. My plan was to make myself like Italy, which I never liked. I kind of had resentment towards Italy, and in a way towards my dad for taking me to Italy because I liked Switzerland more, or I thought so when I was a kid.
Right.
Now I would probably not agree with myself.
Yeah.
I never felt at home in Italy, but I tried to make myself like the place I was in by doing what I loved.
Yep.
And then after a couple of years of running the studio, I realized it wasn't enough. And that's when I started looking elsewhere. And first I was thinking of going to SAE in Milan, and I just couldn't I didn't want to ask my parents for more money after they lent me the money to help me build the studio, because SAE is a very expensive school.
Yeah.
And so I decided, and my plan, I should say, at the time was to go back to Switzerland eventually. So I was thinking at the time, I cut my teeth in Italy and then open a studio in Switzerland at some point somehow. Didn't have a specific plan about when or how.
Yeah.
And then I just, when I looked into SAE and realized it was too expensive, I was like, I want to do something to learn more about engineering and to not just record punk hardcore.
Yeah.
As much as I liked it, I realized I was limiting myself because there's no jazz scene down there. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go to New York. And the reason I decided was because there was a guy called Federico Panero who now lives in Florence. At the time lived in New York and was started as an intern, then went to assistant, then went to engineer at East Side Sound. And he's the one that said, if you're serious about going to New York, send me some stuff and I'll see what you can do. And I sent him some mixes and he was impressed. He was like, these sound really good, especially considering you recorded them in your basement. So I'll introduce you to Lou and see if they can take you on as an intern. So that's what he did. He made an introduction. I went there. It took me a while until I was able to start the internship at Eastside Sound. And when I finally started, I was given a vacuum and shown the toilet and the coffee machine. And I did that for
Literally.
a very long, literally, yeah. I literally for a very, very long time, unpaid, cleaned the toilet, made coffee for clients, vacuumed the floors for months and months and months. And I definitely, paid my dues.
Why is that important?
It's important because you learn to appreciate and you learn the environment you're in. If you just get thrown into something, you don't appreciate where you're coming from or what you had to do to get there. And also, you just can't have an expectation, which is the problem with today's people. They go to an audio school or they don't, and they know Pro Tools from having it at home, and they think they're engineers, or they think that knowing Pro Tools makes them an engineer. They don't know anything about signal flow, about studio etiquette, nothing, all that stuff that you learn by being in a studio. So when I started interning at the studio, I literally went unpaid, working 18 hours a day for like 2 years.
Just cleaning and just being...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I cleaned for 2 years. I probably cleaned the first 6 months and kept cleaning throughout, but it was very, very gradual. It was very gradual because you just don't do that right away. I never tried to tell Lou, oh, by the way, I have a studio in Italy and I already know how to do this. No, I would never say that, I just let him discover what I could do and let him, and I try to be helpful as much as I can. And the key is really there, going from being helpful to becoming important.
Right.
When you become essential to the operation of the studio, that's when you start getting paid.
Right.
And my big break was when Lou one day was sick and asked me if I could cover the session for him, after already 2 years into it. It happened to be a session with Luther Vandross, which was very, formative in its own way.
Sure. Do you remember, God, man, I got so many questions. Do you remember what it was like that day for you to come in and be like, okay,
Yeah, of course.
I got to do this?
I mean, I think I was confident enough that I wasn't concerned about the technicalities of running the session. At that point, I was already running sessions as an assistant. I just hadn't done one as an engineer or with somebody that famous.
Yeah.
Of course, there was pressure, but there was also excitement. It's like every time something like that happens, you see your future more clearly, and you're energized by the possibilities.
Yeah. It went well.
It went very well. It was incredible seeing Luther work. It was my first time and only time working with him. He came in. I set up preventively 4 microphones because it was going to be him and 3 background singers singing on a track that I had previously recorded for a record that unfortunately never came out by Ivan Hampton, who was the drummer in Luther's band. And so I set up 4 microphones, headphone cues, make sure everything worked. And he walked in and he said, get rid of both those 3 mics. We'll just use one. And I was taken aback thinking, maybe there's no background singers, whatever. I didn't know what was happening. He took a mini disc at the time, or DAT, I think, and learned the song by just listening to it 2-3 times. Took some notes on a pad, and then the background singers arrived, and he basically not only taught them the song, but the thing that I really remember from that day is that he set up himself and the 3 background singers up around the one microphone and in an arch, and he put his arms around the background singers' shoulders, and with his arms he would create the harmony that he wanted to hear. So he obviously had with the pen and paper, because he had never heard the song before, he worked out his 3-part harmony, and then with his hand movements he would push or pull back any one of those 3 girls to get more of the note that he wanted to hear or less of the note he didn't want to hear. And that was kind of incredible to watch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember going to bed that night thinking, fuck, that was fucking awesome?
I don't remember that, but I'm sure it happened.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
What other kind of things prior to that session do you remember? Pushing the mop, cleaning the bathrooms, all that kind of cleaning the studio. In terms of, Mark, just be patient. Stay patient. You're on the right path. Because I got to imagine, I know. I mean, I assistant edited and stuff like that. I lived in London for a bit. I studied acting in London, and I worked at a theater, and I did the same thing. It was like get the tea for the director, and in exchange, you get to sit in on the rehearsal and just watch. And then whenever anyone needs anything, you go get them their shit.
Yeah.
And you're reminding yourself, just sitting here doing nothing, I'm learning, I'm absorbing.
Of course.
But it's hard, right? Because you want to get up and act, you want to do a show, or you want to record, you want to do whatever.
Yeah, of course.
To temper that, I
don't remember how I tempered it, or if I had to temper it.
You just knew you were in the right spot.
Yeah, it felt right. And honestly, the thing with New York is it gives you something all the time.
Yeah.
Even though it takes a lot from you, because it's a hard city to live in, it constantly gives you, and it gives you enough to keep you excited. And that's true to this day. I can be slightly sad one day and walk around the city and find a whole new level of energy that the city gives you. It's just such an inspiring place.
Yeah.
And the same happened in the studio. You might have a week in which you have shitty artists or shitty sessions, and then you get the one session that just completely re-energizes you and reminds you that you're doing the right thing, that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
It was not easy. I lived in very dire conditions for a long time.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
Yeah.
The first apartment I got, which was in New Jersey, right across here from Javits Center, every time it rained, it was a basement apartment. I was in a share. I was paying $250 a month to be in that one room with two roommates. And every time it rained, the basement apartment would fill with about an inch of water. And so I actually had an air mattress so that it would float when I wasn't home and it was raining. That's the life I lived in order to be able to afford, because my parents don't have money, so I couldn't.
Sure. Well, they've already given you thousands of dollars for this desk.
Exactly. And I left Italy, and I promised myself not to ever ask for money at home, and I never did. I left in '99, and I never asked for a penny.
What did you do for work outside of the internship where you weren't making money?
Well, first I came with savings.
Okay.
And at the time, in Italy, in order to support myself, when I didn't have enough work with the studio, I was doing web design for an Italian company, and as a freelancer. And so I was designing website. It was, '99 was kind of like the era of designing websites. So I was doing that to make a little bit of money on the side, because it also allowed me to do it without having time constraints, when I didn't have a session or whatever.
Sure.
So that's how, between savings and that, I supported myself, but primarily by living very, very cheaply. Like I basically lived on a budget of $500 a month, which is unthinkable today. I had $250 for rent, I had $60 for a Metro card, and the rest was go to money. No shows at the time, no social life, nothing. Just like work, sleep, work.
Yeah.
Or just work without sleep. That's how it happened for me, and I knew that the only way I could sustain myself long enough for anything to happen in New York was to live like that. Because if I started spending $1,000 a month, I would have not made it to the end of to where I needed to until I finally started getting paid. So yeah, it's hard.
What gives you, like today, maybe it's the Grammy wins or the nominations or just working with an artist, what gives you the feeling of that was worth it?
Oh, every day.
Every day.
Every day. You do something in the studio with an amazing musician, even if they're not famous, and you realize it's worth it. When I go on tour and I mix for 2,000-3,000 people or 50,000 people, that makes it worth it. When a record that you've recorded or mixed comes out, that makes it worth it. So it's like a million little things that constantly remind you of the fact that it's worth it. I just love what I do, and that's the key of it. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't. Or if I wanted to make money, I wouldn't be doing this.
What a story, man. It's funny. Fela Davis, do you know who that is?
I don't think so.
She mixes for Christian McBride.
Okay.
She was one of my early guests. Great story, very inspiring story. Another one just worked her ass off, you know. Didn't come from an area where there was a music scene. She had to drive 3 hours to like the nearest hard rock.
Sure.
Hard rock? Place like that.
Yeah.
To work for like $65 to coil cables, drive 3 hours home, sleep in her car, work in a chicken factory to drive back to the night, right? And she moved to New York, and she was telling me about same thing, just living so cheaply and everything. And she's like, man, I would cry on the subways going home because it was so hard. And she's like, I realized like, you haven't existed in New York. You haven't lived in this city, and you're crying on a subway because it's hard. It does suck the life out of you, but at the same time, it does push. I mean, I've come back, you know, when I lived in LA, and I'd come back here and no money, and you're walking the streets like, oh, Jesus, man.
I wouldn't exchange it for anything.
Yeah. It doesn't sound
the
like
city to be. It's the most exciting city in the world, and I've been all over the world.
Sure. Do you like LA?
I like some things of LA. You know, the weather is nice. We'll leave it at that.
I'm curious, from Italy, Switzerland, you know, being over in Europe already, was London on the map?
London was never on the map until recently.
Ah.
I started going to London more recently, and I started doing some sessions there and some shows, and I have a lot of reasons now to go to London.
Yeah.
And I like London as a city. I don't think it's as cool as New York, but I do like it. So I actually just got an apartment in London so that I can start doing more work there.
Nice.
And so now I'm spending more and more time there, but you know, it's still 80-20 favoring New York.
Sure. Studios in London that you are excited to work in, or that you have worked in, you're like, I wouldn't trade that. Yeah, that's
well, I haven't worked in very many yet. I am planning on a session at Abbey Road, which of course I'm very excited about, because it's such an historical place. I hope to be doing something at Air also early next year. And I've worked in a couple of other studios doing sessions with an artist called Sam Eastman from London. And then I'll probably be working with another singer-songwriter from the area. And there's a couple of studios. I've been actually actively looking at studios these last couple of months because I have several sessions being planned.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting to know all the studios in London, and it's nice because there's still a lot there. It's not like New York where they've all closed.
Sure.
You know.
Favorite studio anywhere in the world?
Well, it depends how you look at it. If you're looking at it from a point of view of versatility, I actually really like East Side Sound, where I'm chief engineer. It's not very, very large, but it's one of the most versatile. It's got 6 ISO booths. You can have 7 musicians completely isolated with line of sight. It's got an analog console with digital recall and digital control, so you have the best of both worlds there. It's really all about versatility, and I store all of my gear there, and I have a lot of gear: speakers, microphones, preamps, all of that. So I like it because it's very much home. If we're talking about, you know, construction or like just like setups, there's this incredible place in Poland called Albernia, where I plan to do a session next year, which is one of the most incredible facilities I've ever seen. If we're talking about history, then of course it would be Abbey Road, which I'll be lucky to work in very soon. So yeah, there's a lot of studios. In LA, I like Village Recorders. I've done a lot of sessions there the last couple of years.
When you think of a place like Abbey Road and going to work there, you know, I got to imagine it's like, okay, you know, you get in there the first day, and how do I harness the magic here that's happened?
I don't even know.
Is that intimidating, or is it you just put a mic up, it's going to sound?
It's not intimidating. It's exciting. I don't think you have to harness magic. I think you have to make magic with the art by going there with the right artist. You know, I wouldn't want to spoil my experience by going there with somebody that's not that great but has a lot of money to pay for Abbey Road.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Let's hit Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Because we're coming close. You got a lunch. Lou was one of the longest artists you'd worked with. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've worked longer with Zorn than with Lou, but I worked with Lou Reed for 7 years, doing live sound mostly and some studio recording.
On your website, he's got the quote there that says something to the effect of, "You get my sound. You make me sound the way I want to sound." That's a pretty phenomenal statement from a guy like Lou Reed.
Yeah, no, Lou is a very, very demanding and tough person. So to be appreciated by Lou meant a lot, and to work with him meant a lot. You know, he can choose to work with anyone he wants to, but he chooses you. That alone makes you feel good. But you're always on your toes.
Yeah.
And you always have to be ready, and you always have to make sure that he's happy.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the most demanding people I've worked with.
Yeah.
But, you know, that also keeps you sharp. And
Yeah. How did that come about?
It came about originally through Zorn, because Zorn, not many people know this, but Zorn actually introduced Lou Reed to Laurie Anderson, who then, you know, were together as a couple for 15 years and got married. So Zorn originally introduced me to Laurie, who needed a sound engineer for a tour she was doing, her Homeland tour.
Yeah.
So I mixed Laurie's show on the road around the world for several months. Excuse me. And the first show I did, I was coming off the road with another artist. I was in Japan, and because of the dates, I had to jump on Laurie's tour without having done a single rehearsal. I had seen her show. I went to see her show in New York, just to watch it, just to see what I'm about
see every
to
show here.
mix. Yeah, but I mean, I specifically went for homework.
Yeah.
Then I went to Japan, worked with whoever I was working there, and flew back and flew directly from Japan to somewhere in the States. That was in New York, I forget. Somewhere I think in Florida, and did my first show with her. And it was nerve-wracking because I'd never mixed a show, but Lou was there as her husband and basically sat himself next to me at front of house. And everyone looked at me with sad eyes, thinking, you know, this is going to be bad for him. And I mixed the show.
Did he comment?
I was expecting him at any minute to comment, and he didn't say anything the whole night. And
wow.
So, and then after the show, Laurie took me aside and said, "I want you to know, Lou was very impressed with the fact that you had never mixed a show and you didn't miss a cue and everything sounded great." I was like, "That's awesome." And then everyone in the crew was like, "Man, I don't know how you did that, how you survived Lou sitting next to you." Not just the pressure, but he apparently, I was told, didn't happen with me, but apparently he's very big on commenting when he's unhappy.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of that, so I never saw that side, but I was told, you know, the production manager, who's also our lighting technician on that Laurie Anderson tour, was like, "Man, I can't believe that Lou didn't say anything. I can't believe you came from a show in Japan without mixing this and it sounded like that." Everyone was very complimentary, and so that kind of sealed the deal with Lou, I think. I mean, he never said that to me, but I think that's when he probably looked at me as a sound engineer and not just as his wife's sound engineer.
Right. And he thought, maybe I'll bring this guy with me.
And that's how it happened. You know, I finished Laurie's tour, and then he started going on tour, and he called me. Yeah.
How do you mentioned he could be tough, hard. How do you work with that?
You just sharpen your instincts, sharpen your claws, sharpen everything you have. You know, sharpen all your tools to be ready.
Yeah.
I mean, the way you work with Lou is he asks you for 5 and you prepare 15, because if he asks you for 5, there's a very good chance he'll ask for 8 or 10 things or whatever.
Yeah.
So you prepare 15 of them so that you're ready, so that whatever he throws at you, you're ready for it.
Were you a Lou Reed fan prior?
No, not a big one. I mean, you know, obviously I knew the songs, but I didn't really have his full discography or or anything like that. So
Right.
it wasn't like I was about to work with one of my heroes.
Sure.
I very much respected and appreciated him.
Yeah.
But I was more into heavy rock when I was
Yeah.
younger. So
Who are some of the artists that you were big fans of that you finally gotten to work with?
a lot of them. Recently, Nick Cave.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite artists, and I got to do a session with him, which was incredible. I've been very lucky in my career.
Yeah.
U2, Foo Fighters are all bands that I've listened to a lot throughout the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's been a fun run.
Where do you see it 10, 15 years? Let's put it out 15, 20 years. What are the big plans for you? What do you want to do?
I don't really have big plans. I mean, I'm not one of those people that makes a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
What I'm clear about is that I want to continue making great music. And I would be satisfied if in 15 years' time, I have made or I am making records that will stand the test of time. Whatever the artist of that time will be, or if it's an artist of this time, I want to be making records that are going to be listened to 30 years later. Mm-hmm. I would say that's my goal.
You are all over to different studios around the country. You work in a live setting. You see a lot of younger people coming up. What's one of the big mistakes that you see younger people making? Is there something that you see that you're like, oh, these motherfuckers?
Oh yeah, they're all self-entitled. They're all so entitled. Like I said before, they think they know because they have Pro Tools or Logic on their laptop. Mm-hmm. And then they're thrown in a recording studio setting and they're completely unable to function. They don't know signal path, signal chains. They don't know how to behave themselves around people. Mm-hmm. They talk at the wrong time. Studio etiquette is a major thing that's getting completely lost because studios are disappearing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are wrong with today's generation. Mm-hmm. But it starts very young. I mean, I look at my friends' children and I see how self-entitled brats they are at age 3 or age 4. So no wonder they're like that when they're 17 and trying to be engineers.
Right. Any way to course correct that or without beating someone down or firing them?
I mean, obviously you give everyone multiple chances and then you fire them.
Right. I feel like the Swiss in you get one chance.
No, I give multiple chances, but I like efficiency and I like hardworking people. I don't like lazy people.
Yeah.
It really takes me the wrong way, rubs me the wrong way. So if you're hardworking, you'll make it. If you have the right attitude, you'll make it. If you don't, you won't.
Yeah.
But these days, I mean, we get like tons of interns at the studio. And I'm kind of like, we get all these interns at the studio and I'm always appalled and surprised by how uninterested they are. For example, when I was an intern at the studio, I was longing for being in the control room and watch. That's all I wanted to do. These interns that we get nowadays, they sit up front in the lounge and they're on their own computers. And they're waiting for me to tell them, hey, can you coil up that cable or can you get me that mic? They have to be told, which I don't get. Like when I was an intern, I was like, I had one hand on the mic locker in case a mic was being asked of me,
Right.
I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to show myself, my interest. That's completely gone. There's one in 50 nowadays that are like that. The rest are all lazy. They're all waiting to be told. They're not proactive. They're not ambitious. They do what they have to do so that they can say they did the internship.
Right.
But they don't have what it takes, and I can see that right away.
Yeah. If you could travel back to your 16-year-old self who had the epiphany of, I'm going to buy my friend's desk.
I would do it all over again. no question.
What would you say to that kid?
I mean, follow your dreams sounds corny and cheesy, but that's what I did. I would say today, because we are in this industry, I would say make sure you have a backup plan. I wasn't smart enough to make sure I had a backup plan at the time. Maybe web design in a way was my backup plan. But I didn't consciously say, okay, let me finish university so I have a degree and a backup plan in case this doesn't work out. Today, I would maybe say to somebody, because the industry is shit, I would say to somebody, make sure you have a backup plan, because it's not all about following your dreams. But I'm glad I followed mine.
Dude, this has been epic. And I don't want to, I want to keep you selfishly,
You
but
can keep going.
You gotta go, man.
I mean,
just,
it's up to you. I got time. I got another 20 minutes.
It's all good. I think we need to circle back somehow at some point.
No, sure.
Mille grazie.
Mille prego.
Dude, fantastic. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Mark. As we say in France, merci beaucoup. And once again in Italian, mille grazie, signore. Mille grazie. Folks, please stay tuned next week for episode number 109 with Miss Jill Craig. It's a great one. In the meantime, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. And check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note, because you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And folks, in the meantime, be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.